and Ruth and Deanna. Let's see, there's David. Great. So welcome, everybody. Let's see again. I see Greg got us started and David. Hello. And Heather and Chris and Ruth and Deanna. And I know MJ, I think we all saw her email, has lost a family member and won't be with us this evening. So here we are. We'll make a motion to begin the meeting. Someone? Deanna, you're muted, but I saw your hand wave to make a motion to.
I'll make a motion to begin the meeting.
Cool, great. And a second, and here we go. I second that, and off we go. So we were together for only 3 weeks ago. It feels like a very quick turnaround to have this meeting. But I appreciate that everybody was ready to jump back onto a Zoom. It's a Zoom tonight, not an in-person meeting. I know the mayor is wanting committees to meet in person, and we would have done that again tonight, except that there was just really no room available to us. So here we are on a Zoom, the next best thing. So it's a really quick agenda tonight too, but I think this is a pretty exciting meeting. I guess we don't have Bob Gillis either, now that I'm looking around. Do we have Bob? I don't see that we do.
I don't think Bob's on.
Okay, so Bob has been really great to take minutes for the last couple of meetings. Is there someone who could step up and do that in his absence tonight? Again, I think it's going to be a very quick meeting. So if anyone would volunteer to do that, that would be really helpful. I know it's the most exciting of jobs. Any takers?
I'll do it.
Thank you, Deanna. That's appreciated. And I really do think we'll be quick here. So I don't think there's a lot of minutes that we're going to need to take. So Bob did circulate minutes, which I think went to Greg and to David. David, did you get those minutes?
I did. Yeah. Actually, I'll make a motion that we can approve the November 20th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Hi.
All right, great. Terrific. Great. Okay, so moving right along. The most exciting part of tonight, obviously, is that 3 months ago, we said we were going to create a funding program to get this $1.5 million invested into affordable housing in Gloucester. And we've done that, which is really exciting. So when we met 3 weeks ago, David and Greg agreed to be the keeper of the document to kind of make any last minute changes, which I think were very much de minimis and minor. They've cleaned it up though, so that it's kind of, all we need to do at this point, I think, is take the watermark seal, as you put it, David, off the document, and it would be ready to be live, so to speak, on the 2nd of January. So any questions about it or discussion about it, we could open that up right now. And I see Chris.
Yeah,
I just wanted
to sort of, and again, sorry I didn't make it to the last meeting. I wanted to just sort of review the part 3, which is
Sure.
on the second page. I'm just speaking from the way that I again, out in the field, how I look at things. And Larry, you might be able to see it a little different than me from your standpoint.
And Chris, before we go further, can someone share their screen so that we could have this page of the document up? Deanna, I know you're sometimes able to do that, or maybe David, could you do that from your end? Share the document itself?
Yeah, I'm trying to open it right now. Give me a second.
Okay, cool. So Chris, why don't you just wait till we have it on the screen? So
Sure, no problem at all.
Larry, while we're waiting, I don't want to forget this. And we all should have gotten this email today from Melissa Gillis from the mayor's office. It's to all board, committee, and commission members. They're going to have a meeting on Tuesday, January 30th at 6 p.m. It will be remote. The topics to be covered will be the open meeting law, the hybrid meeting technology, and meeting room availability. I just want to make sure everybody got that email today.
Got it. Yes, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. I got it too. It's great. And David, thank you for pulling up the document. So Chris, do
Chris,
you
are you
want to,
talking about-
direct David to where you're referring,
So,
Chris?
and again, depending on how some of these nonprofit projects are moved forward, and not changing much, may rearrange, and at least in my mind, unless you tell me that it's not looked at more practical in the nonprofit field, which is generally, I like the three categories. I'm just going to tell you what I think and tell me why it shouldn't be that way. I'm going to just say a few things to you. So where it says pre-development,
Yes.
I would almost put that first before site acquisition, and I would call it pre-acquisition.
Okay.
And in part of that, if someone was going to bring a project to us, I would want them to have already completed and paid for and ruled out some high risk items. Have already done their financial feasibility, and any 21E reports, because that can go down a big dark hole really quick if they haven't done that sort of stuff. Bringing something to the table, it can be the 21E reports can mean a 21E first phase, 21E second phase. It could be a nightmare. And if we're opening the door to take on projects, it's something that I would not probably volunteer to pay to do those. If that hasn't been done already, that can be a super high risk and a lengthy process that in a pre-acquisition that we wouldn't want to take on putting money towards, because if we put money towards, we're locked into that time frame that might take 6 months, 8 months to go through. These are just my thoughts out loud.
Yeah.
So I would almost put it as not pre-development, but pre-acquisition, and then site acquisition, and then development. I would put it in that order, and probably again take out a couple of the things. They should have already done their financial and paid for their own financial feasibility. And the 21E reports. All the other stuff, I can see if it's a good project, they want to do some engineering. I think that that's something to look at. But those are just the way that I would approach something from more strictly private profit way of looking at things. And but I would put pre-acquisition, because a lot of that stuff you need to do a lot of that pre-acquisition stuff anyhow before it goes in, before it's looked at a bank in a favorable way. They'd want all those questions answered prior to acquiring it. They'd want to know that that's got a clean 21E or process to follow. They'd want to know that it already makes it's already financially feasible. So you'd want someone to do a lot of their homework and spend a lot of their own funds to get it to the point where they can bring it to someone like us. So I'd call that pre-acquisition. Then the acquisition, which is assembling all of the monies and sources of funds to be able to make a project go forward. So that's how
You're only suggesting changing the word pre-development to pre-acquisition.
Yes, and putting it before site acquisition.
Changing the order too, right, Ruth? You're
Changing the order. Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I would,
Changing
first of all,
changing
Chris,
the name.
thank you.
Yep.
For
Got it.
that input. I think it's important to listen to you. You are a for-profit developer and an experienced one, so we appreciate the input. And I think as long as it doesn't cost us any time, David, if you wouldn't mind reordering those two sections, I think that's fine. I would say that the word pre-development, in my experience, is more commonly used than pre-acquisition. So I wonder if you'd be comfortable, Chris, if we used both terms, like with a slash, because I think in the world of nonprofit development, groups are used to the term pre-development, but I think
Got it.
pre-acquisition, they're sort of synonymous almost. Although it could be possible, right, that someone already owns the site, so they're post-acquisition, but they'd like some early action money for their deal,
Sure,
which would
sure.
be under the pre-development category, where they'd seek this grant to kind of do some of the things we ticked off in here, like,
Yeah.
so it could be post acquisition, but pre-development, meaning before the heavy lifting of the development. Yeah.
Again, this is more your bag of words, but I just, that's the way that I would look at it. And whatever you think is appropriate, I just want to bring it up from my
No,
standpoint.
I
how
think
would
it's
look at it.
really, really good feedback. David, would you be able to make that change after the meeting tonight? That if we hear other changes, of course, we need to make some more of them, but that seems like a pretty easy one.
Yeah,
So-
just
And I
move
almost
this
think it's a-
section up.
I think it's a good catch. It makes sense that pre-development, pre-acquisition would be before acquisition in the ordering of these three categories. That makes sense.
So if that, what you just had mentioned, so if they've already acquired it, then it wouldn't be site acquisition? Would there be something along with site acquisition if they already own it as well? Would you call it, would that be more in the development stage probably then?
Yeah,
if they-
right. So
Okay.
the idea
Okay.
of the three sections broken out is to give some structure to the applicant to think
Yep.
about where they are, like in the life cycle of their deal. So
Yep.
someone could
Got it.
apply for, we call it pre-development. I like pre-acquisition. So
Yep.
the pre-development, pre-acquisition category would allow someone to ask for 75,000 up to
Yeah.
that amount for all of those.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah, and then acquisition, right? The way this is posited to work here is really, you could come to us with a site and you could say, hey, it costs whatever it costs. Here's our backup for that, our appraisal or our market
Yeah.
study. And we're
Okay.
looking to actually recoup some of or all of our acquisition
Got it.
cost.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
just want to point out just from out in the field, the way that I look at it, and
Yeah.
you understand both sides, the profit, nonprofit, and you know what's best to do, Larry. So I just
No,
want to
I
point that out.
appreciate, I think that's a great suggestion.
And
'Cause I
just,
do
and
think
just,
it makes
and just the
sense to have the
open-ended.
order changed here. I agree with that.
and just be mindful of the 21E when you start doing that, the time frame and the cost that the hole that you can go into. So just however you want to deal with that, that's fine.
No,
I just want-
I mean, listen, I think that that is such an important issue. And I know you, with your own work, go through in permitting and in environmental
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
You've been through that you're something of an expert, right?
Yeah.
Over and over again.
not an expert with the 21E, but I've had to deal with it
Right.
2 or 3 times. Yeah.
So the idea with later in the document and in the rating and ranking portion of it, one of the modifications we made along the way was to really weight a lot of the point scoring in that section. And that's really the heart of this thing, right? Like you aren't going to get any of our funding if you don't submit an application that scores
Yeah,
well in
got
that
it.
section. And we've got a lot of points now really tilted toward readiness to proceed. So I think it's up to, and Chris, we'll rely on your expertise when applications come in. I think when we go through them in detail and we see issues like pending 21E reports or other kind
Okay.
of issues that, in my experience, yours and Bob's and others on
Yeah.
on this board, we know that's a potential long lead time item
Yeah.
that might indicate
Yeah.
that the readiness to proceed isn't there. That could
Especially Bob.
cost
He's
an
probably
applicant
seen
points.
Bob's probably seen hundreds of those.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
that's good. Yep.
this group, us,
Okay.
we will actually look at these applications, you and me, Chris and Bob and Deanna and all of us and Ruth and Heather, and we're going to say, look, if we see indicators that tell us in our experience that this project's not ready to proceed, and I would say
Got it.
you haven't done early environmental work or that part of your project development is very opaque or uncertain, that's going to hurt your chances, all things being equal, to get funding here.
Got it. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's all I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention. That's it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Anyone else have any? So we're going to change the order of the sections. A great edit. Are there other comments about this kind of
Larry?
final draft?
Larry, can I just interrupt? I
Yeah.
see that there's an attendee that says Robert's iPhone. I'm not entirely sure, but it might be worth checking to see if that's Bob Gillis that's on as a attendee and maybe not on the Zoom. I don't know if there's a way that we can check that.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't see him from my end. I see us and I see David.
There's
Here, now,
and then
here comes something. Here comes someone.
Can
I
you
think
hear me?
someone's joining right now.
There
yep.
he is.
Yeah, that's
So
me,
if you could-
Deanna. You guessed correctly. Sorry, I'm late.
Yeah.
I don't know if Bob heard any of that last conversation, but it might be good to recap that
Yeah.
with him and get his input.
Hey, Bob. First of all, welcome. Can you hear me? It's Larry.
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Larry?
Yep, I can.
All right, great.
I'll do a quick recap of an excellent comment and suggestion that Chris McCarthy made just before you joined, which was in the early pages of the document. Chris suggested, and we agreed, that we would change the order of the three primary sections of the program where the funding categories are articulated, to have what we're now going to call pre-development, pre-acquisition as the first category out of the three. Makes sense, right? Because that comes before the second, what will now be the second category, the acquisition
course, yeah.
funding
Yep.
opportunity. And then we would have the main development round as the third and final section. So we
That's great.
agreed that
Yep.
what's happening now is with final revisions, David has agreed to make them so that we can move quickly toward January 2nd. So that is so far the one revision that someone's brought up this evening that we agreed to make.
That's great. I agree with that.
Yep. So now that you're here, I was just opening it up to the rest of the group, that if other folks have any other comments or feedbacks or suggested edits to this final draft, please say so. Ruth?
I just want to express my appreciation to Deanna and Heather and to the staff for creating this document. This whole section that Chris is talking about, the most important words there are funding for nonprofit developers with 100% affordable projects. It's not going to be easy, and I'm so glad that's worded the way it is.
Thank you, Ruth. I'd like to echo the appreciation to Deanna and Heather for months of work on this document, and also to David and Greg, who helped get it over the finish line.
And to Larry, of course.
Yeah, and Chris, you too. I mean, there's been
I did
input,
very
and
little. I
Bob,
did nothing. I did
too,
nothing.
for attending every meeting and for giving sage advice on this thing. This is
That's-
pretty quick turnaround for us to do this in 3 months. So it was a team effort, which is great. And I think, Ruth, you're right. And I would like to, I'm looking at Deanna. If she can't see that I am. I think I'm proud of the fact that we're really prioritizing nonprofits in this funding application, that we've really tried to challenge any applicant to really deliver affordable housing that Gloucester folks, ordinary Gloucester folks, will be able to afford. That's important. And I feel like those elements are here in this funding program, and that's a big deal. So Deanna, you were pushing for that all along, and thank you for that. Who else? Anyone else have any things they catch or they think should be changed or modified before we approve this?
I had one thing, Larry, if
Sure.
if it hasn't been dealt with yet, it's really not a big deal. But under Roman numeral 4 on the pages aren't numbered, but the page where there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there are 9 bullets at the top. And then there are 3 squares down below. I don't know if you can see that, just before Roman numeral number 5, which is application process funding timeline. It's like the 4th or 5th page of the packet.
I'm going to see if David,
That's
if
it.
he's still
That's it
there,
right there. That's it, Larry.
David might have
Okay.
stepped away from the screen though. I'm not sure, because I
No,
know they have, no, here he
I'm
comes.
here. Yeah, we're on it right now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my only thing with that, look at the first square, the first,
Oh, I
not the
see.
bullet, but the square where it says, first of all, the bullet up above, it says all other criteria being equal, the Gloucester Affordable Housing Trust has a preference for projects which, and the first square says, which have been fully vetted and for which all research and development, feasibility studies, city permits, and letters of support from community. That's like an incomplete sentence. It should say
It
has
is.
been completed, something like that. That's all. It's not a big
Yes.
deal.
David, have been submitted or obtained?
Yep.
Okay, obtained. Thank you, Bob. That's a good catch.
Yep.
Okay.
There's just
Other
a few,
comments? Yep.
there's a few like there's one sort of typo and a few minor formatting things. I don't know the best way to handle that. They're just really quick changes. I'm happy to just make a list of them and send them to you, David. Does that make sense?
If they're not substantive to what we're
Yeah, it
approving
has
tonight,
noth-
then just send them along and we'll clean it up.
Right, it doesn't change any context or content at all.
Deanna, these are literally punctuation type level things you've seen as you've reread the document. Thank you, David. Then, if that's okay with the group, we can let David do a final punctuation editing
That's
round.
good by me.
Okay. And if anybody else reads it one final time after tonight and sees punctuation level changes or mistakes or typos, and David, maybe we could agree, the group could agree that, can we get those into David by Wednesday? Deanna, is that feasible for you to get your list of little typo level?
Sorry, my dog is whining in the background, so I'm
Okay.
trying to mute and unmute, but I can have them for you tomorrow.
Great.
So I just, as we're looking, I just had I had one question regarding the process timeline.
Yes.
And it says the very last, if you go to the top of that page. Yeah, it says the very last one, should the city council be in there as well or not? That last box.
No, we struck that. They don't need to be part of this process. The ARPA funding comes directly from the mayor's office.
Thank you.
Dave, I
But
think
should-
that
should there
was
be-
Chris,
should-
the meeting that
should
you were
we-
not at,
Yeah,
it
gotcha.
was explained to us by David and Greg that it's unique to this federal funding. It doesn't, for whatever
Yeah.
reason, David, you could expand on this, but doesn't require city council approval as a step in the commitment process.
Yeah.
If this were funding from the city or the
Yeah.
Airbnb tax or any other funding, it would, but in this case, it doesn't.
Could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could we put something, even though it's not required, out of courtesy, because we're gonna be doing other funding through them, could we give them notice of some kind at that same time, out of courtesy?
I don't think if it's necessary, Chris, that you have to do anything. If it's not necessary, it doesn't mean, I think it clouds the whole,
Well,
Ruth, I
part
think
of our-
you were talking, Ruth, and then you cut out.
oh, I'm so sorry. My point to
okay.
Chris is that if it has nothing to do with them giving any kind of approval, the mayor will be reporting to them on what he's doing with the ARPA funds, but I don't see any reason why to add them to that box.
Okay. Well, I just think I don't know. I think just it's out of courtesy. I think it's something that we should give them notice of some kind out of courtesy. I think it's appropriate. Not, it says decision by the mayor, but this is just out of courtesy, because a lot of our other funding goes through and has to be approved by the city council. I think it's something that we should at least give them notice that what would not again, not a decision like it says, the final decision by the mayor. I think we've got to at least give them notice. That's all.
So let me see if I can help here. So when we read that fourth box, right, it's that we as a group of trustees will vote on whether to award funds to applicants. We will have done our rating and ranking. We'll have, I'm making this up, 3, 4, 5 projects. Hopefully we do that well, which we've rated and ranked. And we've written that up into some sort of deliverable document, which we would be reviewing and approving and sharing at a public meeting, right? So it would be very transparent, the process in that way. So I would ask the group, doesn't that feel sufficient for notifying really the public, the city council, anyone who's
Larry,
interested in seeing,
I'll say
right?
this, it does
Yeah.
to me, and what I would say too is that Gloucester Affordable Housing trustees will vote on whether to award funds and shall pass recommendations on to the mayor. We cannot award funds without city council approval. That's built into this guideline and application package. So it's implicit that the city council is going to be aware of this.
So David's gonna have to speak up here, right? So I do think the guidance from 3 weeks ago at our last meeting from David and the city really is that's actually not true in this instance, Bob, because it's federal funding and for reasons that relate to the funding source. In this instance, we actually won't be looking for city council approval. Is that right, David?
So that's correct. Yeah, if you wanted to use this as a general application for your process going forward, we'll have to redo this a little bit, but I think the idea was to get this up and running for ARPA, make sure it runs correctly, which is discretionary from the mayor's office, and then we can morph this into a more permanent application at some point in the future. So it's a good template to start with, but at this time, we don't need to go to council to spend ARPA funding.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I thought it was in this guidelines and application package, but if that's
No.
not the case, then that's fine. Okay.
And
No,
David,
it's strictly.
No, it was, Bob. You're right. It was until we met, I think, 3 weeks ago on the 20th of November. And we got this guidance that David just referred to at that meeting. So we took that reference to city council approval out of this document. That's why
Okay.
that's why
Gotcha.
Chris, this is why I think Chris is raising it, because he's seeing it isn't there.
Right,
This is
right.
why.
Gotcha.
I know that they don't have to be, and they don't have any decision in the process. I just think it's a courtesy, and I think if you don't put just notification, strictly notification, not any decision, not any vote or anything, but just notification out of courtesy. That's all. I think I think if you don't, I think it's just you're going to anger some people for not putting on notice that money that's coming into the city with the mayor with pure discretion, and they're sort of snubbed and not even just to give them a nice courtesy. That's all. I think if you don't, you're in trouble. Yeah, I just think it's just a notification. That's all.
so here's the way I look at it, Mr. Chair, is that
Yeah.
there's a communication, line of communication between the mayor and the city council. There's a process already in place. And I don't think we have any obligation to go outside of that. I think this particular lump of money that we're getting, the decision on funding will be made by the mayor. So it's a specific lump of money. It's not real estate tax money. It's not, I think we're fine exactly the way it is.
So I'd like to make sure we get a voice from each of you then on this issue. Bob or Deanna or Heather, please. I'm asking each of you to kind of weigh in here and let me know what you think.
I mean, we have a date to
yeah,
go over
go ahead.
the application, so they'll have notice of the date and be able to attend the meeting if it's something that interests them. So they'll have notice of
Sorry,
the
do you mean the council members themselves?
City council will have notice of our meeting that's coming up and can attend the meeting if they'd like. Right? And when we go over the applications, that'll be a public meeting.
Well,
Exact-
right, so all of our meetings are include a public notification component so that the public and the city council know, if they care to look, that when all of our meetings are happening. And we'll have an agenda which is posted, which would indicate that we're going to be reviewing applications. And then, of course, the meetings are open to the public. So yes, you're right. Anyone could, as we begin to look at the applications, people could come, they could listen to our deliberations. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so I think that we don't need to include it on here if they're gonna be invited to the meeting anyhow. As attendees.
Right. Not,
I
it's not that they're
agree with that,
invited as
too.
much as it's true what you said initially, that these are public meetings and they're open to members of the council as they are to members of the public. And we always notify in advance. So that is true.
Yeah,
Deanna?
We do have a section, I just can't put my finger on it right now. There is some other location in this application that we talked about, making the application and everything visible to the public so that people could comment on that, review and comment themselves. So I'm just trying to figure where that is.
You're right. There was a section that referred to just what you said, that we would have the applications up on the city website for the public to see, and of course the council could see them too. You're right.
They're without page numbers, I'm not sure. I think it's the second page.
Yeah,
of
there it
the
is. No,
actual
David's highlighting it
application?
now.
Yeah, I have
David's
it
highlighting
highlighted
it
right
now. The
here.
Gloucester Affordable Housing Trust encourages public participation. All applications received by the trust will be posted on the city website in May of 2024 and will remain there until funds are encumbered or redirected. Interested members of the public may submit comments regarding proposed projects via a letter submitted to the Gloucester Affordable Housing Trust. Public comments on proposed projects will be accepted until June 30th, 2024. So the idea is the window opens, the funding window is 120 days between January and April, end of April. And then we rate and rank and review and post those applications in May. And then there's really a 2-month period where members of the council and the public could see all of the applications we've received and comment on them. So that is true.
Mhm.
Deanna, do you have any specific thoughts on Chris's recommendation that we include notice to the council?
I think if we wanted to add just a footnote clarifier that because of the, the federal source of funding that's not required. But I don't feel like we need to add any additional steps that it doesn't enhance the decision-making at all. So it's not required of us.
Okay. Thank you. Bob, do you want to weigh in?
No, I agree with that too, with all due respect to Chris. I think it's cleanest if we just do what we're required to do.
Anyone else? I think I'm leaning with the majority here, Chris, but what I will say as the chair of the board is that it feels to me with the timeline that we've laid out here, that there's really plenty of opportunity for any of us as individual members of the trust to kind of remind people to take a look at our website, to take a look at the applications and as I said earlier, when we compile our rating and ranking and make our recommendations to the mayor and deliver that in writing to him, that will be a public document too, that the council will really be able to just point and click and access if they wish to. So I feel like we're being very transparent, and I think the way we've laid it out makes sense.
It makes sense until people's egos get in there.
Yeah.
That can't be our problem.
And that's what you're gonna get. You get somebody who just, makes a big deal out of it, and it just becomes a problem because they weren't given notice. That's all. That's all I'm thinking. I've seen it, but that's whatever you think.
Okay.
I don't
think there's anything wrong with or anything precluding any one of us as members of this group of kind of just using our voices to remind people to look onto the website and to look at the documents that we're sharing in these meetings. And we will deliver our recommendations to the mayor, but that document will be a document people can see if they wish to and could read and understand. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of us sharing it if it's a public document with members of the council. If an individual on the board wishes to do that, right, David? I don't think there's anything untoward about that. It's public information. So
Yeah,
feel
I
good
mean,
about that it's out there. It will be out there.
And I don't know, are you suggesting?
I think the flip side of what you're suggesting, Chris, is that if I don't want to imply that the city council has a role in approving or not approving these awards if they in fact don't. So I don't want to
are we going to use
language.
this? Are we going to use this application for future projects that aren't ARPA money?
So that's
It'll be
a great
reworded.
question.
It'll be
Reworded, right? And yeah, and Deanna's agreed to get the ball rolling on you doing a takeoff of this, Chris. Takeoff of this
Okay. Yeah.
program. But I know where you're going there. Yes, we would then absolutely have to include language that the city council,
Right.
when we're using city funding or other funding that isn't this federal funding, would have a role in approving the
They
funding.
have approval authority in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this instance, it's almost, I think, Chris, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like it would be, rather than creating problems, it would be creating problems in the sense that we're giving the sense that there's another decision maker there when there isn't, or that we're giving perhaps members of the council opportunity to weigh in when it's not their decision, it's the mayor's decision based on our recommendations. So,
Well, they're gonna think it's their decision anyhow because they're not gonna look through everything.
but it's not.
Leave it. I know it isn't, but I just leave it the way it is, and I just think it's gonna I just think that you're gonna get somebody that's gonna be taken back a little bit, and it's just where we at least, even though we don't have a decision, you should have given us. That's just how I feel, and I that's
Okay.
fine. And that's not a problem. Keep it the way it is. That's just the way I feel. I just.
Again, I appreciate the comment because I hear where you're coming from as looking out for the group to not catch flack over something that we could avoid. So I do take the spirit of your comment in that way, Chris. I think it's a good suggestion, but in the end, I think Deanne is right that I don't want to imply that there's even an obligation for us to do something if there isn't. But I don't think there's anything wrong with us making sure that if we have particular members of the council or all of them, that we want to direct their eyes to the public documents we're posting and make sure they see them, that's fine, and we should.
Gotcha. Okay. No problem. I have no problem.
Okay.
So Larry, just for the sake of time, I might get booted from the library. So if there's
Okay.
anything else we want to go over.
Yeah. Any other comments from the group or any other suggested changes? Hearing none, I would say thank you so much, David. We'll get you the typo changes and edits, the final little ones to you by tomorrow or the next day.
Excellent. A lot of good work. Thank you.
Thank you all. And the timeline is, there was a press release which was posted on the mayor's website at the end of last week. It's talking about our goal to have this program up and live on January, I think it's 2nd. So I don't know that we need to do anything other than be supportive to you, David, and we'll rely on you and Greg to get this posted. And I think all of us can continue to spread the word on the street that this is going to happen. There'll be hopefully a newspaper article that results from the press release the mayor put out. That should help drive attention to the program. But we can all go out and be ambassadors now and tell potential applicants that this is going to happen in January. And then there is this 4-month period where people can apply. So that's great.
Is there a list of nonprofits that we can, or even for-profit developers that we could mail this out to, or like by email, just send it out with perhaps even with the mayor's press release?
When you say we, do you mean us as individuals, Deanna, or the trust as a, like,
Yeah,
we don't have.
I don't think it would be advisable for the trust to solicit.
I was thinking
but,
the city in some way. can
we
do that.
definitely can't. Yeah,
You
You
can't,
cannot.
you
You definitely
cannot,
cannot.
or you can.
we cannot.
You cannot email out the application. How does it get publicized?
We will publicize it, but I think as we discussed before, if you'd individually like to share it with your networks, that would be fine. We can't really give preferential treatment to who we include or who we don't. It would be like us selecting a consultant without going through a public bidding process.
So we put an
So we
ad in
will
the paper.
publicize it.
We look.
Yeah,
put-
and that makes sense to me, right? We could all think probably of 3/4 of the usual suspect type developers on KPM, but to David's point, it's not a comprehensive list, and I don't know that such a list exists. And we haven't precluded nonprofits from other places from potentially applying too. So anybody, the minute we would send it out officially, we would be disadvantaging other groups.
I feel like at our last meeting, we talked about maybe including it with like an MHP newsletter kind of thing. Some of the housing organizations that put out regular newsletters shared from communities and
I think the key here is the mayor's press release. I think that's what should go out to the world with a link to the application.
So maybe our next meeting, we should see how we can get it blitzed out there. Whether it's, putting out proposals, come out in the end of January, or put together something so that we can put it in the, is it, you take ads in papers? Is that what you, or you put an ad out there, or like a request for proposals in the Globe or the local papers? How is that usually done?
Sorry, David, question for you. Does the city have a process in a case like this with a NOFA or an RFP of this kind? Like, is there a legal notice requirement?
There is not. I mean, this is a funding program that you're releasing. We've done one press release already. I think it went out either today or recently. I think we had discussed after January 2nd, there would be another publication in the paper through a press release.
Okay,
Once it's live, we can say, hey, remember that thing we told you about? Now it's live. Please go to the following link, et cetera, et
And I-
cetera. And we can take that and send it out to
Mhm.
MHP and all those other people.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have a pretty far reaching email
Mhm.
reach, I think.
and listen, as members of the trust, I would encourage all of us, you,
Mhm.
Deanna, certainly, and all of us as individuals, take that official mayoral press release, which we all received this morning, and send it to whomever and you wish to. So like Chris, developers that you're aware of and know of, I think it's fine to do that. I think it's a you can send the link, which would take people right to the document on the city's website. I think it's okay for all of us to kind of do that, and we should. I think Ruth, you're right, 100% right about that. That document contains like the launch date of the program, a good overview description of what it is. Right. But we don't, the only thing that Ruth said that I agree with is we don't yet have a link to the live document. But as David said, as January 2nd comes and goes, then we would be able to actually send people a link, which would take them right to the document on the city's website, the application document we're approving tonight.
So, David, did the press release that, I didn't read it from this morning, does that have the link? No, it doesn't, because it hasn't been.
It's not live yet, so we can't, there's no link to send out right now. Once it goes live, it'll be out there.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. That's a great point you made. And I think David's point that there would be a second press release once the program is live in early January where, and at that point, there's attention being drawn to the live program and the actual link is up and the actual application is there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, given the deadlines of the funding program itself, I think that, we need to be pretty diligent in getting the word out about it.
Yeah.
And everyone should remember that January 2nd is the day after the inauguration. So the timing is all good.
Great. So I feel like that was the next agenda item, to just kind of talk about the timing issues between tonight and the second, and I think we've done that. It's not on the agenda, but I did want to share, this was kind of breaking news as of this morning, is that we've got a joint meeting in a box scheduled to do it with the Community Preservation, is it corporation or association? I always get the third word wrong. Community Preservation
Commission.
Commission, thank you.
Commission.
Right, Matt Lumbergen and I spoke yesterday, and he and I agreed, which was great, that we would co-host a meeting in the box on January 3rd at 5 p.m. at the Open Door in their conference room. I shared that information with Greg and David this morning, and really we're going to invite members of this board, and the Community Preservation Commission or committee will invite their board, and we can do a meeting in the box, which is a fun exercise to kind of provide input on the community planning initiatives that the city's doing. So please mark
Larry.
your calendars. I know, Deanna, you'll be traveling and unable to attend, but if others could come, it would be
Maybe.
really great and useful and helpful.
I think I
Larry-
fly home that day, so we'll
Oh.
see how I am.
Okay,
Larry, just so you'll know, there's one at Gloucester Stage that day from 3 to 5, just so you know
oh,
that.
yeah, okay. I didn't know that, but that's great. I mean, I feel like this is, look, one of these things where, hey, if you can get to one person's meeting in a box or some other group's meeting in the box, as long as you do a meeting in the box with someone at some point along the way,
So
that's
what,
really what's important.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's exactly right, Larry.
okay,
what time is the
That's
one
what-
you're proposing?
5 p.m. On the 3rd at Open Door. But listen, Ruth, if you've already done a meeting in the box, you don't necessarily have to come to the one that we're going to put on. We thought it would be a nice way to just stand with the Community Preservation Committee, do something jointly with them, since we want to strengthen the relationship with them. So this was an opportunity to do that.
Mhm.
Can we bring food?
We have a shared vision.
Why not? Do you want me to?
Is it-
I could tell everyone it's a potluck, and we could bring.
No, actually, I mean, that first week in January is sort of a good time to be doing this. And I mean, I might do both of them.
Cool.
It'll be
That's great.
completely different perspectives.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Great. So we'll get some kind of communication out about that. I was wondering, I wasn't sure, and I asked Matt, David, I wonder if you could weigh in on this. Do we have an open meeting law requirement to notify the public and invite them, or what?
So-
If we do a meeting in the box with another committee like this, is that subject to open meeting rules?
We can post it, we'll post it. I mean, it doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean that, the agenda will likely say they're doing a meeting in the box. You know,
Right,
There's not much to see there. However, if anybody wants to go, you can.
cool, okay. So then we will do that too, to comply, and see you all on the 3rd.
All right, good.
Yeah. So I think that was the agenda. So,
All right. Do we have a
Hearing
motion
nothing
to
else?
adjourn?
yeah, motion to adjourn.
Before you do that, can I ask whether there's a next meeting or is January 3rd the meeting you're planning?
Great question. I think we should have a January meeting, as we would normally have one. And so, because we'll have a funding program live then, and I think we want to get together and see how we're doing early on. So I would propose that we have a January meeting on the normal Monday, where that meeting would fall.
So that
That'd
should
be
be
the
the 15th.
15th.
Okay,
15th is Martin Luther King Day. So
Oh,
are you
yeah.
thank you.
off, David?
Oh, that's right.
Yes, so everything will be closed. So-
Following Monday is the 22nd.
The 22nd, okay with everyone?
Yep.
It's okay with me, everyone else?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Great,
And that would
okay.
be in person? That would be an in-person meeting and,
We'll have to
Well-
determine if we can get a room.
okay.
Yeah,
does the
we'd like
room
to
have
put
to
the
be a city?
early request out for the Harbor Masters, as MJ pointed out, conference room. Don't just call it the Harbor Masters office, the Harbor Masters conference room.
Right.
We would love to use that if we could, David.
Does it have to
Alright.
be a city building? I mean, we could always use my office if we don't have anything else.
It has to be publicly accessible.
I mean, it can be, but
Well, we'll try to see what we can find.
okay.
Okay.
Do a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I heard so moved. Great, this meeting is adjourned then, right? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Alright.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye.